Okay, hello. I am Brittany Handura, real estate agent, coach, and investor. And today I wanted to talk about ChatGPT's predictions for the 2025 housing market. So I asked ChatGPT today, what were their predictions? And so let me read to you what I put in there, and then I'll read to you what ChatGPT said. And then, because nobody asked, I'm going to give you my version of what I see happening and what I see going on. So let's jump in and see what I put in for ChatGPT, and then uh, what is it that it told me. So here's what I asked. What are your 2025 housing market conditions considering the current administration, the economy, and the economic forecast in the US? Pull all relevant information about tariffs, job reports, consumer sentiment, and anything else that might be a factor. So here's what ChatGPT said. They said the US housing market in 2025 is influenced by a complex interplay of economic policies, market dynamics, and consumer behavior. Here's an overview of the current conditions. Okay, so obviously we know that it's dynamic, it's always changing, it's always moving. So that we know is the nature of the housing market, and there are going to be some things that really input um that really not input, what's the word I'm looking for? That really like make that directly, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not input. But anyway, you know what I mean. They're directly relating to the housing market. So mortgage rates and affordability. This is the biggest question I always get answered. What are mortgage rates? How are they right now? What does that mean for me? What is my payment going to be? Blah, blah, blah. So mortgage rates are tied actually closer to the bond market than to federal interest rates. So as interest rates go up or down, it's not necessarily directly tied to mortgage interest rates, but the way that it is that when we see that interest rates are starting to, like when we see interest rates dropping, that is not a direct correlation between mortgage housing rates dropping, but you can see somewhat of a drop in the interest rates. But what we do know to be a fact is that the economy, all of these other factors are going to factor into mortgage interest rates. So when we have a recession, that actually is having a recession is actually good for mortgage rates, because what the government says is, hey, we're in a recession, things are tight, people are not buying houses, but buying houses is what stimulates the economy. So we want to make it easier for people to buy houses. So let's stimulate the economy by lowering the mortgage rates. And it's not like they actually do that specifically, like the government doesn't come in and lower mortgage rates, but they do other things to make those mortgage rates actually go down. Or they incentivize home buying, they incentivize different things like that. So let's see what ChatGPT said. ChatGPT said mortgage rates have influenced, wait, hold on, start over. Mortgage rates have experienced fluctuations, with the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage hovering around 6.84% as of February 2025. While this marks a decrease from the peaks of 2024, rates remain elevated compared to historical lows. This trend impacts affordability as higher rates increase monthly mortgage payment, potentially sidelining prospective buyers. So we currently sit around that 6.85. In the last few days and weeks, it's been around 6.8, 6.75. Still a little bit high, especially if you're thinking, okay, well, my interest rate was 2%. Gone are those days. Gone are the 2%, 3% interest rate days. We're not seeing those anymore. But we were seeing 7 and 8% interest rates. That is really difficult to do when you're talking about the prices of houses just keep going up. And so when the housing prices continue to go up, you have to have some kind of affordability in there. And right now, there really isn't. So there has been in my area a little bit of a stall in the inventory that's coming on and how fast it's moving. Now, remember, if you're working with a good agent, if you're listening to your agent's advice, if they're pricing it right, things are still flying off the market. But you have to make sure that you're working with an agent who knows your area and who knows the industry and who knows the macroeconomics of what's going on. If you don't have an agent in your area and you're thinking of buying or selling, reach out to me because I can help anywhere in the US. I can connect you with a great agent. So, when we're talking about these interest rates, it really makes a big difference because we are talking about interest rates changing your monthly payment by hundreds of dollars. It's not just like, oh, by a couple of bucks or the cost of a pizza. We're talking hundreds of dollars every single month. Now, here's the thing is that what I always tell people is it's always a good time to buy or sell as long as you are prepared to do it for the long run. So if you're an investor and you're looking to get in and just do a quick flip, is this the best time? I don't know. Now, it's always a good time if your numbers work out. So if your numbers work, go ahead and do it. But this isn't necessarily a great time for anybody. You're not just going to find easy deals. You're going to really have to work for them. So what is it? What is the benefit of buying right now? Well, the benefit for buyers of buying right now is that the interest rates have come down a little bit. They've come down about 0.25% across the board. So if you're an FHA buyer, a VA buyer, if you're getting some of those other kind of incentives, your interest rates are actually going to be lower. If you're just a straight up conventional buyer, then your interest rate is going to be around that 6.8%. You also have to keep in mind that it depends on what you're buying too. So if you're buying a condo or a townhouse, those are going to be higher interest rates than if you're buying a single family home. So just keep in mind that just because you're seeing this interest rate doesn't mean that that's what it's going to be for you. So make sure that you're connected with a good lender and you know what you're talking about. The first step is to connect with a good agent. Reach out to me if you need that good agent. So what we're talking about here are the mortgage interest rates. What happens when interest rates are high? It means that there are less buyers on the market. As interest rates come down, there are going to be more buyers on the market. And because we still have such limited inventory, because people aren't selling because they want to hold on to that 2% interest rate. So the only people who are selling are people who have to sell. So when the buyers come to the market, they right now are going to see that they are going to need to have some patience potentially because they're with more buyers that are coming to the market. We are still seeing an uptick in offers being made. Another agent in my office was just telling me that he had 5 offers on his property that went live less than a week ago. This is fast moving. So again, that's when it's priced right. If it's not priced right, then it still is going to be sitting. We've seen things sitting. So what you want to do is if you can afford it, get in now because interest rates will likely continue to go down. Because here's the thing, with a recession looming, with consumer confidence at a 5-year low, or I don't know what it is, but it's low, with the consumer confidence at a low, the interest rates are not going to continue going up. They're going to go down. However, if you wait for them to go down too much, then you're with a ton of buyers who are going to come to the market, and then there's a lot more competition. But here's what we're seeing on the sell side is that if you're looking to sell, housing prices are going to continue rising. And the reason for that is supply and demand, just like it always is. I talk about this. I feel like I talk about supply and demand every single day. Supply and demand makes housing prices go up. So when there's less supply and people are staying in their houses and there's more demand, those housing prices are going to go up. And so what we're seeing is that housing prices are still continuing to go up. They're still predicted to go up. Actually, I think Chat GPT has something to tell us about that. But we are seeing that the housing prices are going up, up, up. And so you just need to be aware of that. And you need to say, okay, what is it that I'm willing to do? Am I willing to get in now at a higher rate? So that means a higher mortgage, a higher monthly mortgage. But once interest rates fall, you'll be able to refinance. Or do you want to hold off and wait until you're going to get a better rate and therefore a better monthly mortgage? But then you're going to be in this competition and you're likely going to have to pay more than what you wanted to pay before. So it really just depends on your situation and what your strategy is going to be. And again, a great real estate agent can walk through that with you and help you decide. So if you don't have one, reach out to me and I can connect you with one anywhere in the US. So that's a little bit about mortgage interest rates. What we're going to see moving forward is with we don't know what's happening with inflation, with tariffs, with recession, all of that kind of stuff. What's coming, we don't know. And so, with that uncertainty, it makes buyers uncertain too. But what I've seen in my local market is that there are still a lot of buyers. People are still out there, they're still buying houses. One thing that I will note is that just recently, I had somebody who I had a listing that was priced a little high, but we lowered the price. And so it had been sitting because, anyway, it had been sitting. And so we lowered the price. And so we got somebody who wanted to write an offer. And in the time that they were wanting to write an offer and had talked to the lender and everything, stocks had fallen. And so all of their stock or all of their down payment was in the stock market. And so because the stocks had fallen, it meant that they didn't have the down payment that they wanted to put down. And so the monthly payment was going to be too high for them. That's just not what they wanted. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see, I feel like that is a good case study for what we're seeing right now. Is it's not just about the recession. It's not just about the housing markets. It's not just about the tariffs. It's about the stock market. It's about jobs. It's about all kinds of stuff. That is the macroeconomic level that we need to be looking at, because that tells us what's to come forward. We want to look at what's coming. So, I mean, what I always say is if you can afford it, anytime is a great time to buy real estate. And the reality is that if you can withstand this administration and, however long you're going to be in this house, if you can withstand that, you're going to make it out just fine. You're not going to have an issue. You're not going to lose money. Now, don't hold me to that, but on like the US economy, especially for housing, has continued to go up year over year, especially, or I shouldn't say especially, but even taking into consideration the big drops in like 2008. All right, so that's talking about mortgage and affordability. What about home prices and inventory? So ChatGPT says home prices have continued to rise, albeit at a more moderate pace. The median home price in California, for instance, which is where I am, is projected to reach 909,000, there we go, 400 in 2025, reflecting ongoing demand and constrained supply. Inventory levels remain tight, contributing to competitive market conditions and sustaining price pressures. So this is basically exactly what I just said. That was a spoiler. So what we see always in home pricing is it's always about supply and demand. And so if the supply is high and demand is low, you're going to have lower housing prices. That has not been what we've seen in like a decade. But when inventory is low, the supply is low, and demand is high, which is what we've been seeing for the last at least 5 years, that is when you get a stronger seller's market. That's when home prices are going up. And that's what we're going to continue seeing, because even with this administration, even in this economy, even with all of these things, home prices are going to continue going up. And trust me, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you fall on. People buy and sell homes under every presidential administration, with every president. And over the history of 50 years of the US housing market, it's gone up. You still make money. Don't you worry about that. If you're looking to move out of the country and get out of Dodge, then I would say probably don't buy right now today. But As long as you're able and willing to sit and stay for a little while, at least, 5 years or so, you're going to be fine. So when we're talking about inventory, currently today, I'm in California, inventory is low. And one of the things that we need for inventory to be boosted for more houses to come on the market is not just lower interest rates. Because remember, I said that the sellers are not selling because they are sitting in their 2% interest rate. They don't want to go anywhere. But in addition to that, we have that the new builds are not being built. So new developments are not being built as fast. And so that's something that we also want to take a look at. We want to make sure that we're looking at, when we're talking about the macro economy, we need to look at what does home building look like. And right now, when we're looking at tariffs coming, the threat of tariffs, Canada is our largest importer of lumber. That is talking directly to the housing markets. If there are these tariffs that are implemented and on lumber especially, that is going to make housing prices go up. The cost of new builds go up. And if new builds go up, then the surrounding areas go up. Now, in my area where I am, there aren't tons of new builds. And so I know it's funny because I just drove to the Central Coast over the weekend, and I just was there in December. And I feel like from now to December, there has been tons and tons of development. There is also out by me in more Ventura County, there is a lot of development, but it's not like you see it in other places. And so all of that development might be slowed because it's more expensive. A lot of those extra costs are going to be pushed onto the consumer, if not all of them. Because why wouldn't they? Because that's what happens. And so all of those are going to be pushed onto the consumer. And so now we're seeing that it really is just going to be a matter of how much is this going to be, and will interest rates go down to make it so that people can buy and will incentivize people to buy. That's really what it comes down to with inventory. So housing prices are going to continue to go up. So what I tell people is, if you're a seller, maybe wait a little bit. Wait until like the summer, because you could get a little bit more. But if you're looking to sell and then buy, then now is a better time to do that. Because if you wait for housing prices to go up, the purchase of your next home is going to be higher, and there are likely going to be more buyers, which means more competition. So your offers are going to be higher anyway. The housing prices have gone up, all of that. So you want to make sure that you're being strategic about this. Okay, let's talk about what's the next thing. The next thing is tariffs and construction costs. Dang it, I keep giving spoilers. All right, so this says the current Chat GPT is telling me the current administration's tariff policies have introduced uncertainties, particularly affecting construction costs. Tariffs on materials such as lumber and steel have led to increased expenses for home builders, which may be passed on to buyers, further exacerbating affordability challenges. They say maybe, I say for sure they will be. Of course, they're going to be passed on to consumers, because that is what big businesses do. That's how they stay in business. So of course, we, the consumers, are going to see those costs go up. So the cost of new builds, the cost of remodel, the cost of flips, all of that is going to go up, because so much of what we use to build houses and to fix up houses and to renovate and all of that is likely going to be tariffed. But there's still so much uncertainty around that we're not 100% sure, but it makes it so that a lot of people are unwilling to move forward until they have a little bit more certainty. So, and again, I say it makes it so that some people are unwilling to move forward, and yet we're seeing tons and tons of buyers coming. So make sure that if you are a buyer, or if you have a buyer, that you're continuing to tell them and helping them to understand what this looks like and what it will look like in the future, because likely it's going to be cheaper to buy now than it will be to buy in 6 months. And then job market and consumer confidence. So ChatGPT is saying the labor market has shown signs of cooling, with modest increases in unemployment and slower job gains. These factors have contributed to a decline in consumer confidence, which has fallen to a 4-year low as of March 25th. Diminished consumer sentiment can lead to reduced spending and hesitancy in making significant financial commitments, such as purchasing a home. So, the job market is a really good indicator of what's to come, because if you are thinking that we have a really strong job market, then you are going to be more willing to make a big purchase. But if you are unsure, you as a consumer are unsure, and you don't know if this is going to be good for you, if you're going to lose your job, if you're going to keep your job, if you're going to get a raise, if you're not, whatever it is, then you're going to be unsure. And in uncertainty, people don't make big moves or big purchases. And so you want to make sure as a consumer that you know where your job is going to be. And what we're seeing is that consumer sentiment is declining. So a lot of that confidence in their jobs, confidence in the economy, confidence in what's to come, that is all declining. And so we are not going to be able to, or we're likely not going to see a ton of people who are making these big moves when their jobs are uncertain. So what we're seeing, what I know is that what we've seen in the past is that there have been a lot, like savings rates are up and all of that kind of stuff. That was like 5 years ago over COVID. Now savings rates are down, so there's less people saving. Credit cards are higher. The job market is more now unstable, and so it really makes it so that you really have to be a smart, savvy buyer to be buying in this economy and to know exactly what it is that you're doing. So, all the more reason to reach out to a good real estate agent and make sure that you're working with a good agent who understands all of this. So, when it comes to job markets and all of that, the job markets also lead directly into, or I guess maybe slightly indirectly, into inflation. And then inflation is what the Fed looks at to lower interest rates. And remember, that's not directly tied to mortgage rates. That is the federal interest rates. But that really, the federal interest rates is what really drives, in my opinion, consumer confidence. And so if consumer confidence is down because interest rates are going up, now keep in mind that in the last economic meeting, the Fed Chair Jerome Powell did say that we were still on track to likely see. Actually, I don't think he said this, but we are still on track to likely see at least 2 interest rate drops this year for the federal interest rates. But that, because there's so much uncertainty, nobody is sure about that. And so we can't bank on that because we just don't know. So we'll see what happens there with the jobs. And as the job reports come out, it really is just going to be about the consumer sentiment and if they're going to be spending and making large purchases. So regionally, I'm in Oxnard. So in Oxnard, the broader Southern California region, housing market trends mirror national patterns, which means higher prices. High demand coupled with limited inventory continues to drive up home prices, making affordability a pressing concern for many residents. Prospective buyers in the area should be prepared for competitive bidding situations and may need to explore various financing options to navigate the current market landscape. So that's in my local area. And remember, that's what Chat GPT said. So that's in my local area. If that is, and that is pretty common, I think, in all of Southern California, I would say for most of Southern California, because if you get into the super high end areas, it's a little bit, they have like a micro economy that's totally different. But in my area, in like Oxnard, Ventura area, it really is, it mirrors the overall general economy, the general sentiment. Prices are still continuing to go up. There are not as many buyers as there were, but there are still a lot of buyers. And especially as interest rates tick down, there are more and more buyers who are coming. And so those buyers are now getting into bidding wars again. And I have heard from lots of agents telling me that their clients are not necessarily wanting to do a bidding war. And so that for you as agents, you need to inform your clients that the bidding war is not a bad thing, because because a house is worth whatever the buyer is willing to pay for it. And so if you as a buyer are wanting to pay $50,000 over asking, then that is what the house is worth to you. If, however, you are not willing to pay for that, then don't even worry about it. Don't even go there. But getting into a bidding war is not necessarily a bad thing. That's what your agent is there for, to help navigate. So don't just say, I'm not getting into a bidding war, so I'm staying out of the market. I've heard that a couple times. And I just think nobody wins in that situation. You're not going to win if you're just saying, I'm staying out. So that is all ChatGPT had to say about this. So actually here's a conclusion. Let's see what ChatGPT said for a conclusion. Navigating the 2025 housing market requires careful consideration of prevailing economic conditions, policy impacts, and personal financial readiness. Prospective buyers and investors should stay informed about market trends, seek professional advice, like a realtor, and evaluate their circumstances to make well-informed decisions in this complex environment. So, of course, we want to make sure that you're well-informed. And so as your agent, I am going to be sharing with you all kinds of information about what happens on the macroeconomic level and down into the microeconomic level to your little hyper-local market. I want to make sure that all of my clients understand exactly what's going on, because it makes a big difference. If all of a sudden interest rates drop, then you're going to have tons of buyers flooding the market, and you're going to have a lot of people who are wanting to buy the same house. And so that conversation with the buyers needs to be, you need to have patience, and you need to be ready to potentially bid over asking. And with sellers, if they're saying, hey, I want to get the maximum amount of money for my property, then I would say, what if we waited for, a month or two to put it on when there are going to be more buyers? Again, it's all about supply and demand. So when there are more buyers on the market and inventory is low, it's going to be low supply, high demand, prices are going to go up. And so you want to make sure that you're getting in there while the prices are a little bit lower. In California, it's all about appreciation. It is the long game. Real estate is about playing the long game. And so in California, that's what you need to be looking into. You should not be just waiting for the interest rates to drop, especially for investors, if you're just looking for cash flow and stuff like that, you're probably not going to find it in California. You're not going to find it with these interest rates. Maybe if you're a cash buyer, you can still get some pretty good deals, just depending on the motivation of the seller. So check out, so be sure to follow, like, and subscribe and for more. And I will be here live again next week. And I will talk again we'll see what other topics ChatGPT has for us, and I will react for you. But in the meantime, follow me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, BrittanyHanduraRE, everywhere. And if you're on YouTube, you can see my little puppy. Oh, this way. Buford. No, you can't see him on Instagram. And Dougie's down here too, my little assistants. So thanks for coming, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.